Today we need to talk about something heartbreaking, but incredibly important. And what that is the tragic death of Robert Brooks. Now, this was a man who lost his life in a way that no one should ever have to lose their life. The story is disturbing, very disturbing, but it highlights a much bigger issue in American society, and that is of violence and inequality in our justice system, particularly behind the prison walls. So the date of this event was December 9th, of course, this year. Robert Brooks was at the Marcy Correctional Facility in New York. He had been transferred there and was supposed to be in a safe, controlled environment, right? Instead, he was brutally attacked by correctional officers while handcuffed and unable to defend himself. So let that sink in for a moment, right? This individual was handcuffed, right? How much of a threat is a handcuffed person? Nonetheless, the officers, they were supposed to be the ones protecting him, right? But the video that we see shows something entirely different. And these officers, they don't just fail to protect Robert, they assault him. They punched him in the face and groin. They hit him in the chest with a shoe. They even yanked him up by his neck only to drop him back down, okay? And while he lay there bloodied and motionless, okay, they stripped him of his clothes. Now, this was senseless. This is horrifying violence, unnecessary completely. Robert Brooks was then taken to the hospital after this attack, but it was too late by this time. He died the next morning. The preliminary autopsy revealed, or it basically leads to the conclusion of asphyxia, right? Compression of the neck, okay? So this is not just neglect. And this is the important part for people to understand. This is not just these correction officers neglecting Mr. Brooks. They killed him. This was a killing, okay? The governor has called the footage senseless, okay, and horrifying. And she's right. 13 officers and a nurse are facing termination. Okay, but that's not enough. We need real accountability, okay? And this is not just about this one incident at all. We see this time and time again. The justice that we need from this, it needs to be in response to a system where things like this can happen over and over and over again, okay? And we also need to be real here. This isn't new. This is why I'm saying this. This is not a new thing, okay? You see various advocacy groups over the years have raised the alarm about violence and racism in places like the Marcy Correctional Facility for years, okay? A report from 2022 found systemic issues in this particular prison, officers using excessive force, targeting certain inmates, and acting with impunity. This isn't just about Robert Brooks, even though it is about Robert, but it's a situation that's much deeper than Mr. Brooks. For every case we hear about, there are so many others that go unnoticed that we have not heard about. And the sad truth is, once the headlines fade, people stop paying attention, okay? But we can't let that happen. We shouldn't let that happen, okay? People in prison deserve safety and dignity. So what do? Well, you have to demand accountability in this case. The officers need to face the full weight of the law. And secondly, there should be a push for systemic reform, okay? This violence is a product of a broken system, and firing a few people won't fix the issue. We need transparency, oversight, and real consequences for anyone abusing their power. And I want people to also remember this. If there were no video footage of this killing, do you think that we would have ever heard about the death of Robert Brooks? The short answer is no, right? And the majority of people who are killed unlawfully in the custody of police officers, there's no video footage of these events. You know, these are things that just basically go unnoticed, right? And again, this is a sign of a broken system, okay? So obviously, Mr. Brooks deserved better. And so does every person behind bars. This isn't about being tough on crime. It's about being fair and humane to American citizens and to just people in general, right? So I encourage you guys to share this video, talk about Robert's story, and support organizations working, to change this situation in our system. It can be so easy for people to say, well, that's Robert Brooks, right? He was going through this, and if you really want to avoid this problem, you stay out of jail. And I understand that. And I think that, and to some extent, I agree with that. But on a greater level, we are supposed to be a nation of laws and standards, right? We're supposed to have the highest standards actually in the world. But when you look at police killings by country, you can actually see that America essentially leads the world. If you look at all of the developed nations in the world, right, the quote unquote first world nations in the world, America has more killings by police per year than any other developed nation, right? Than perhaps India. But again, is India developed as much as America? I would argue not. So America leads the world in terms of developed countries, first world countries, in police killings. This is a sign of a deeper issue, a deeper societal issue wherein people are prone to violence and prone to judgment and prone to throwing away life and acting like life doesn't matter in certain circumstances, right? We just saw last month, this individual in New York was able to kill this guy, murder him, and they were able to capture him without any incident, without choking him to death, without shooting him, without doing anything. I read a story just last week from my hometown where an individual had stolen a car and he crashed the car and took off on foot running with a shotgun. And the sheriff officers were able to shoot him in the legs when they had the right to actually kill him at that point. Why? Because he had actually turned with the shotgun to shoot and actually did shoot at the canine that was coming at him. And they responded by shooting him in the legs when they could have killed him. You hear all these stories about these, I'm just going to put it what it is, these non-people of color, particularly white male criminal suspects who do things like this, who shoot up schools, who assault law enforcement officers, who do all of these things. And somehow they're able to take them into custody with a minimal amount of damage to that individual. And I'm not saying I want the police officers to damage him. I'm not saying I want the police officers to kill him. I'm saying I want that same level, and I expect that same level of grace, that same level of restraint, that same level of identifying this person as a human being of value to be placed on other people, particularly black men, okay, who tend to typically get the short end of the stick and meet bullets to the chest, meet, kicks to the lungs, meet being choked to death as well. We just heard the case of the other individual who got choked to death on the subway in New York, and all these people painting the picture as if this black man who had harmed no one, who had only made, empty threats on the train on that particular day, that somehow he is this person who needs to be restrained by the neck. He needs to be choked and stopped. And when he dies by the person who choked him in a similar manner, asphyxia, being choked to death, crushing of the wind of the lungs, oh, well, if he wouldn't have done this, then this wouldn't have happened to him. And I understand that. But what I'm saying is that is barbarism. That is excessive violence. And there should be consequences and accountability for such actions when people take it, man. It's the bottom line. We all want to live in a safe civil society. That's not something that only white people or only black people want. We all want to be in a civil society. But I think that the use of force needs to meet the actual situation. And if it does not, then consequences should ensue. Okay. So I've linked in this video. I've included links to groups like the Correctional Association of New York and the Center for Community Awareness in the description. All right. Check them out. And let's make sure, Mr. Brooks' death, leads to some type of real change. All right. Thank you guys again for watching. I definitely appreciate y'all for doing so. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want to be a part of this conversation. All right. Together we can make a difference. Till we chat again, I'm out.